Hello, everybody. Today we're going to do the very first 2025 governor's prediction. It's early, these elections are still 10 months away, but as far as high profile statewide elections go, this is kind of all we've got for this year. So these are going to be preliminary ratings, and this should go pretty quickly because we've got a whole 2 states that are having elections. The map is right here. It's New Jersey and it's Virginia. Both of them are going to be open seats because each governor there is term limited. And it's only January, but both of the primaries are only about 5 months away. They're coming up in June, so we're not exactly sure who the nominees are going to be yet, but we've got kind of a good idea in both states. The big unknown is going to be the national environment. That might not shape up until we get into the summer, so all that stuff is going to play a role. But let's start in New Jersey. We can pull up the Wikipedia page, and we've got an open seat here as incumbent Democrat Phil Murphy is term limited. And in Murphy's first win back in 17, he won by about 14 points, so it wasn't close at all. But when he ran for re-election back in 21, the margin there was unexpectedly close. Murphy won by just over 3 points. It kind of reminds us of the presidential election where New Jersey delivered us the biggest surprise of all the states. Harris won that by a way smaller margin than we were anticipating. But this is a different office. It's going to be a different environment, but that's not going to stop a ton of potential Democrats lining up for this seat. Right now at Wikipedia, there are 6 declared. There's some more establishment and moderate candidates. There's going to be some in the progressive direction. You can look at those candidates here. You could take a look at all their endorsements. And given that it's so early, any one of them could emerge as a frontrunner. However, if anybody does have frontrunner status at this point, it's going to be Mikey Sherrill. Sherrill is currently in the U.S. House. She's got some military experience. And once we get down here to the early primary polling, you can see that she has about a quarter of the vote. However, 3 out of these 4 primary polls are tied to the Sherrill campaign. So she might be trying to make an early statement. Maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't. But all the other candidates, Ras Baraka, Stephen Fulop, Josh Gottheimer, Sean Spiller, and Stephen Sweeney, they all at least have 7% in the most recent poll. But still, the column all the way on the right are the undecideds, and they lead all these candidates, including Sherrill. Now, as far as the fundraising goes, Josh Gottheimer, he has $20 million on hand. That is way more than the rest of these, so that might tell you a little something about his level of wealth. There's also a debate coming up in early February, so until something changes, I'm going to assume that it's going to be Sherrill as the nominee. Now, on the Republican side, it's also a wide open field. However, there's also a clear frontrunner. That's going to be Jack Ciattarelli. He was the losing candidate to Phil Murphy back in 21, who made it unexpectedly close. He also ran 4 years before that back in 17, but he came up short in a primary. So there are other candidates in this race. But again, at this early point, I'm going to lean toward it being Ciattarelli as the nominee. There's one poll here, but this is not at all current. This is from way back in last June. And it also looks like it has a backing from Ciattarelli, but he does have a massive lead at 44%. So maybe Ciattarelli ends up being viewed as too conservative to win a primary and someone like Bill Spadea emerges. I think it's unlikely, but anything is possible. There's also the fundraising here as well as a debate for the GOP candidates here also in early February. So how does this factor into the rating? Well, this is a moderately blue state, or at least most people used to think so. I get the presidential margin. That's something to take a look at in the future, and the closer margin for governor back in 21. But if we come back to the map, this far out, the rating clearly is going to favor the Democrats. Now, my margins are 10 or more points are going to be safe, 5 to 10 are likely, under 5 are lean, and 1% or less are going to be tilt. So I think a lot of this is going to depend on the Trump administration. If Democrats are energized and motivated to come out, then there's really no limit on how high this could get for the Dems. It could easily get over 10 points. If there was a Democrat in the White House, then I think this easily could get competitive. But for now, I think it's borderline, at least lean, maybe likely for the Dems. So at this point, we'll start it off with a lean rating. As the race develops more and more polling comes out, I could easily take it up to likely, or if it goes in the other direction somehow, I'll look at that if it becomes more competitive. Next, we've got Virginia, and it's another open seat because they only allow the governor here to serve 1 4-year term. So Republican Glenn Youngkin is going to be term limited. He could come back and run again in the future, kind of like Terry McAuliffe did, but he would first have to sit out an election. So it is an open seat, but we kind of have expected frontrunners here on both sides. Here's the Wikipedia page here. Something could change between now and that June primary, but it's expected to be Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears for the Republicans. And for the Democrats, we're looking at Abigail Spanberger. She just left the U.S. House. So it seems like there's a lot more certainty here on the Virginia side over New Jersey. Now, all the way down here, they do have a couple of preliminary polls for the general election, but the most recent one is not even from the last few months, and either way, they're both tied at 39. So this is going to be a good race, and I think it's going to be a good barometer for what the national environment is like politically heading into the midterm year. Spanberger seems like she should have a reasonable amount amount of suburban appeal. But Winsome Sears is the current lieutenant governor under Glenn Youngkin, who actually has maintained relative popularity during his term. So they both seem like formidable candidates with a decent amount of strengths and not a whole lot of obvious weaknesses. Now, real quick, even though those two are the clear frontrunners at this point, there's a couple of stories here, such as this one, where Bobby Scott might actually decide to run for governor. I would guess in the end he's not going to run, and if he did run, Spanberger would still win. But that's something to keep in mind as we get a little bit more toward the spring. On the other side, you've got something similar. Amanda Chase could potentially run for governor. Now, she's considered more controversial and probably not really electable in a statewide race. But again, if she did run, it could make things a little bit more complicated for Winsome Sears. Sears would probably still win, but it could end up getting a little bit messy. And finally, aside from both parties, you've got Denver Riggleman, who might run as an independent, and he's a former Republican who has gone against Trump. So if that happened, that could make it even more complicated and probably would help Spanberger in a general election. So it's early, there's a lot of speculation, things are fluid, they're probably going to change. But if nothing else, we can head back to the map. And normally Virginia elects a governor that is opposite of the political party in the White House. The one recent exception to that was back in 2013. It was Obama in the White House, but Terry McAuliffe won a close one over Ken Cuccinelli. So it's going to be tough for Sears, the Republican, to defy that track record unless somehow Trump ends up being super popular. She's got Glenn Youngkin's popularity on her side, but Spanberger's been preparing for this. At this point, the very early rating is going to be a tilt for the Dems, so they would flip this seat and pick it up. It's really hard to predict any margins here in January, but this is what we do. We try to take a look at elections, even if it's really far out. Maybe in November, we'll look back at this video and it'll end up being accurate even 10 months in advance. So for now, this is the rating for these two seats. Dems are going to hold New Jersey and they're going to pick up Virginia. I don't think these calls are really bold at all. New Jersey could even be a little bit too generous for the GOP, but we'll be sure to update it and follow it as we go. And that's it for this first 2025 governor's prediction. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about either of these two seats? Do you agree that the Democrats have got to be at least slightly favored at this early point? Or do you somehow have them both going easily toward the Republicans? And who do you think the nominees are going to be? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.